Hello there, and welcome back to the AgostinhoZinga show with me, your host, AgostinhoZinga, and this is episode number 453. That's Cuatro Cinco Tres. How you guys doing? How you guys feeling? Wherever you may be, welcome back to the show. If it's your first time watching via YouTube, you know what to do. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, leave a comment down below. That'll be greatly appreciated. If you listen via the podcast app, a 5-star review as well as a share will help the show go a long way. And if you want to support the podcast via Patreon to get access to my bonus episodes, one per week that gets released on there on Friday, make sure you definitely sign up to my Patreon at patreon.com/AGOSTINHO to get more information and to get subscribed on there. Don't delay, get involved today. Hope you are well, man. What am I up to? I'm feeling good. My legs are aching. I think what has it been so far? I think it's been about 3 weeks. I think this might be the third week in the gym. Back in the gym, getting back into the swing of things. My legs are starting to ache. I'm starting to walk like a duck. All these feelings and, emotions that I felt prior are now coming back to me. And I'm kind of feeling happy about it. I got to be honest. This pain is going to be short-lived. I'm going to get to a point where, my physical endurance and my muscular endurance is going to be at a level where it's going to allow me to bounce back a lot more quicker than I am now, and I'll get back to my peak fitness a few years ago. That'd be great. But for now, the feeling of having that being a little bit rough on the edges and feeling a little bit sore is definitely a welcome feeling, especially after spending the best part of did it feel like 11 months or was it less? I don't know if it was less. I forgot how much time we spent because we did have a couple of lockdowns. Then the gym opened up for a small period of time. Then it went back under lockdown again. But it's been a prolonged period of time. Let's say it's been about a year without an ability to go to the gym on a consistent basis. 1 year. That's way too long. Way, way too long. Especially for myself and knowing the kind of structure I need and the kind of clarity it gives to me mentally, and it improves my mood and just allows me to do other things in my life at a really high level. It was very, very much needed and a welcome addition. And I'm sure other people are feeling the same way. Just in terms of having a distraction, something you can do in the morning. Like, it's just good, isn't it? Just to get out of the house a little bit, mix things up a little bit, do you know what I mean? And then, of course, when the world reopens up again, that'll be blessed. But still, man, bloody hell, it took a long time to get there, but we're finally there. So, yeah, feeling sore, feeling a little bit achy. But, we just keep powering through and doing the best that we can with the time that we have available, because why the hell not? What else has been going on? Oh, United just beat Roma 6-2. That's a pretty decent thing to talk about, right? I don't want to spend too much time talking about football because, for the most part, it seems that the football content on here isn't the most popular for coming from me, especially. But, briefly talk about the game. Of course, a tale of two halves. If ever there was one, we were losing 2-1 at the first half. We conceded two very sloppy goals through, basically our own mistakes that basically gifted Roma a goal. And at this level of football, even though Roma are terrible, they have one of the worst defensive records in the league. They're 7th in Serie A. You just, all around, they're not the most dynamic and dangerous of teams. They're still a pretty, formidable European name, and they've got some decent players. So if you give them a chance and you make a mistake, they're going to score. That's the difference. I guess if this was a Champions League, we probably would have got knocked out. They would have probably scored a couple more, and then that would have been, 4 away goals? That would have been insane. But at this level, we still managed to kind of turn it back and give ourselves some room in order to give us a chance to go away to the Stadio Olimpico, which is Roma's ground, and shut up shop and really put in a professional performance and hopefully catch them on a break. That's what you'd want. Second half was a completely different showing. Obviously, talk about the first goal. That Bruno Fernandes goal was delicious. Maybe one of the best goals I've seen United ever score in a very, very long time. Edison Cavani as well was like terrible in the first half. Missed a couple of missed a couple of good chances, and then suddenly scores 2 superbly taken goals. Paul Pogba was sublime throughout, and it's quite clearly maybe Bruno Fernandes' best game I think I've seen him play a United shirt. He just did the simple things. I don't know if it's because now him and Pogba have a decent relationship in terms of on the pitch. I don't know, it felt like when Bruno Fernandes first signed for the club, he was the club's shiny new toy, and he kind of took that mantle and kind of, I wouldn't say he got pleasure. I don't know. It kind of seemed like he kind of was okay with people saying that he was Pogba's replacement. He wasn't necessarily talking about Pogba as if like he's like, no, he should be here too alongside of me. The best chance we have of winning trophies is with him too. And then over time, I guess when Pogba came back in the team and obviously Dappied and, Bruno got to see his level, they maybe connected more as friends behind the scenes. There's the different sort of relationship between the both of them, and you can definitely see they definitely bring out their best in each other on the pitch. And if ever there was a reminder of it, this was the game to definitely see. And probably end up getting on a score sheet. Cavani even got an assist with his ball outside the foot to Mason Greenwood on the right. Roma was pretty much all at sea at that point, and Mason does what Mason does and scores a goal. Obviously, Roma were unlucky. They had to substitute 3 players due to injury within the first 30 minutes. I think crazy. They will just be dropping like flies. But I guess the schedule during lockdown, if you're a professional footballer, was just insane. So I don't blame some of these footballers for just breaking down. So that was a pretty good performance all around. Second leg, it's all but done really. We should be able to have a clean run to the final, and then it's going to be a tricky affair from there. Can Ole Gunnar Solskjaer finally break that hoodoo and get United a trophy, and also himself, and kind of once and for all shut up the doubters? Who knows? Again, take every game step by step in it and kind of go from there. What else I've been thinking about? Oh, I've been thinking a lot about this, still thinking about this Joe Budden podcast thing, man. Replaying some of these clips and hearing how Joe Budden talks to his boys, his friends, supposedly, the people that he kind of built this show with. It's just wild. Wild. And I guess in some respects, it's to be expected. No, to be expected. I do have a lot of people that I know in my own personal life who are kind of, terrible humans, but they do tend to have a pretty decent social circle. People tend to kind of like their company. They want to hang out with them. They attend their birthday parties. They go over their house if they have a new baby. I don't know. They seem to have like a loving relationship of a loving group of people that like them as friends, but they're terrible humans, right? Really bad personalities. No, I wouldn't say maybe as bad as maybe Joe Budden's, but they sometimes have a tendency to talk to their friends like shit, which Joe Budden obviously clearly did in a couple of these clips I'm going to play now. And it just made me wonder, like, how much is enough disrespect from a friend for you to like cut them off? Because friendship breakups are like pretty rare, innit? I've kind of had a couple, right? One of them was maybe self-inflicted. The other one was just, I guess, what can you do? You can't really explain that too tough, even though I know why. You can't really explain, but friendship breakups are quite weird, innit? Because you don't necessarily break up with your friends. You never do. It just kind of peters out, and you just, you both grow apart and things go in different ways. Maybe you move, they get married, whatever. Things change, circumstances and life gets in the way, and then you guys just both let it happen. You let the situation kind of evolve, and you just kind of let it go away. Because if you really want to save a friendship, you can. But it's very rare that you kind of say to somebody, hey, I don't want to be your friend anymore. I've had it happen to me, and it's like, it can be brutal when someone tells you, hey, I just don't want to be your friend. Like, I know we had some good times in the past, but I've moved on. I've got a loving group of friends, and I don't think you're going to fit that circle. And I kind of wish, not even I wish you well, just, stop contacting me, leave me alone. It's like, oof. It can be a bit of a brutal blow, but it doesn't necessarily work out that way. So sometimes it feels like friends can take the piss more than people you're in a relationship with. Because relationships can they usually end, and when they end in a really brutal way, or they end really well, where you can kind of still be friends. But usually it's a kind of a clean break of like, we're done, and on this date, you might end up hooking up later on down the line, but there's usually a cut off, like, hey, we're done because of this X, Y, and Z. But I think sometimes friends can take advantage because there's no clear boundaries as to what is enough to what's the thing that's going to cause me to not speak to you again. No one has that line, really. They say, people like to admit, kind of pretend they do, but they don't necessarily have, because if you think about all the stuff your friends have done to you over the years, that's been quite questionable. And then you think about the times that you've kind of snapped at somebody who's a stranger at the slightest bit of inconvenience or rudeness, you see that you do sometimes, most people, if you've definitely got a group of friends, you definitely treat your friends differently than how you treat strangers, which is understandable because they're your friends. But in this case with Joe Budden, it feels like he takes advantage of that, and maybe it's because of his status and whatnot, I don't know. But you would think the people who have been there for him when he was going through his rough times in the industry, and also the people who have been consistent in terms of their friendship with him and have accepted his good side and his bad side, will be the ones that he'd be a little bit more willing to be, I wouldn't say lenient, but he'd be willing to kind of whatever way he kind of sees things, he'd be willing to sort of like bend it a little bit to kind of appease them. You'd think so, innit? But he doesn't. And this exchange is just weird. This is a thing I'm going to play where they're basically discussing what led to the breakup, and Miles basically saying that, hey, you said a thing that would, you know, most people would never accept, and I just wasn't going to accept that thing you said to me. And then look at Joe Budden's response. So this is meant to be a friend, right? Telling you what you said to them kind of hurt my feelings, basically, without, you know, in no certain terms. And just hear what Joe Budden's say. Let me put this up on the screen here, so you can hear this. This reply is just wild to me.
You niggas left your job, Mo.
That's not what happened, Joe. Joe, you looked me in my face and told me this show was none of my business.
Yeah.
That's what you told me.
I was there.
That's not crazy to you? Is that not crazy?
So, in that instance, right, you would imagine someone that's your friend would say something like, oh, you know, Jamal says to him, hey, you told me the podcast was going to be none of my business, which obviously is rude considering it is his business because they built the thing together. And a normal person would say, oh, I'm sorry, and I'm really sorry I said that. You know what I mean? I didn't mean to say it that way or whatever. But you would sort of like respond to that person saying something that you said to them hurt their feelings, and you'd kind of want to make sure that you apologize and let them know that, hey, I didn't mean it that way and I'm really sorry and I want to move on from this, or I want to do better, whatever. There'd be an apology that would respond to it. But he's like, yeah, no, I was there. Like, I was there. And if you, and I think the clip itself, it cuts here, but the actual full clip, on the other side, he says something like, oh, I shouldn't have said that to you, which basically you can interpret as, I meant what I said, but maybe I shouldn't have told you, because it's always going to, you know, get received the wrong way, because he genuinely believes that, hey, this podcast is mine and the business side of it is none of your business, which is insane if you think about how this podcast has grown from, you know, our name is Podcast Later to obviously its evolution now with all the other co-hosts they had prior. These two guys are instrumental in it, right? And you saw the numbers of their comeback and how people are, you know, trolling online and commenting and wanting to come back. Like, they're an integral part of the show. Without them, the show it's not that interesting. Fair enough, Joe himself is like blockbuster in terms of his crazy behavior, but what makes the show is the fact that no one can understand how people are friends with this guy in Joe Budden, and then you've got his two friends in the industry, or, you know, outside the industry who he knows, who, you know, have knowledge of the industry too, I'll say, per se, right? And that's what makes the show like what it is. And obviously you got the other characters, Parks and everybody else, but that exchange just left me floored, man. It made me think to myself, you know what? Friendship is so complicated, and I think some people, especially when they have, like, you know, some of Joe's personality traits, can take advantage of friendships, because for the most part, everyone else has come into Joe's life, you know, in a romantic sense or sometimes in a business sense. They've sort of fallen out with him and never looked back again, right? Because they don't, you know, they don't feel like they, you know, owe him whatever, that sense of loyalty, whatever it may be, because they just, you know, they had a short experience. It wasn't really going the way they wanted it, because they felt as if, you know, the person who they met and who he devolved into was something else, whatever it may be. But the one constant he's had is actually been his friends, but he doesn't even treat those people good. It's really, really wild. And then talking about owing people things, this other clip here is even more insane. This is about some exchange that they have where somehow Miles trying to convince Joe that he should have respect for his friends, and Joe's basically saying that, no, I don't owe anybody. No, yeah, basically Miles says the words exactly, you owe your friends respect, and Joe's basically like, I don't owe anybody anything. I'm not in debt. Playing that weird semantics game. It's just a wild clip to really kind of get to the bottom of, because it kind of really shows a lot of the things that people have been not a fan of when it comes to the old Joe Budden. So let's play it from about here, right? Yeah, there. Let's play it from there.
Disagree. You didn't build anything with Jay.
Y'all weren't friends.
Y'all not friends.
Your chemistry and actual friendship didn't base on the ability for you, Jay, and Def Jam to put out music. Like, yeah, it was
totally different.
Completely different. Jay didn't owe you nothing. Us, the three of us, all owe each other something because we're friends.
What do you think I owe y'all?
As friends, I think back to the respect thing and the understanding thing. And
in the entitlement thing. What do you think I owe you, Rory?
Oh, just as I'm not talking anything outside of friendship, and that comes down to respect.
What do you owe someone in friendship? I'm asking.
Respect and communication amongst each other.
I owe that to strangers in the street.
Different level of it.
Not really.
Yeah, it is.
Not to me.
Okay,
you owe strangers in the street respect?
Yeah, small. I respect people in the street as I go about. That's how I carry myself.
The same level of respect.
That is how I carry myself. Yes.
That's not what I asked you. I said, do you owe them that? A stranger. Do you owe a stranger respect?
I freely give it.
Do you owe a stranger respect?
No.
Okay, so then you can't say that. You told my friends.
But you don't.
You owe friends respect.
I don't believe that.
Yes, you do.
You don't believe that you owe your friends respect?
I don't believe that.
If it's one thing I've learned throughout this, I'm never gonna expect anybody to move how I move. So that's fine. If you don't feel that way, that's fine. I'm just telling you the way.
And Rory, the word "owe" speaks to entitlement, and I don't have entitlement even in my friendships. I am appreciative of my friends.
You owe your friends respect.
I am grateful for my friends, and because of that, my behavior I would hope it exudes that. No.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I struggle to understand these things. Like, I remember watching Girls. That's one of the things that kind of got me. This is a weird correlation, but one of the things that kind of put me off watching Girls, Lena Dunham's, hit TV series, just because I couldn't understand or fathom or come to grips with the idea that Lena Dunham's character had, such a good friendship circle. And people wanted to be in her life and, men in her life and stuff. It just didn't make any sense. That person had forget what she looks like, just the personality, the character that she wrote about in that story, which I'm sure some of it was autobiographical. But by and large, that person was horrible. And somehow this person had a large group of friends that loved her, great male interests, well, some not so great. A family that was willing to give her anything to kind of make sure she achieves her dreams. It just didn't make any sense. It didn't add up. But then the more I've kind of, the more I've experienced different working environments and I've come across different type of people, it's definitely led me to believe that maybe I was wrong in that assertion, and maybe people like Joe and people like that Len Dunham character in Girls somehow have a way of they have this magnetic power. I don't know what it is, where even though they're shitty people and they have some odd tendencies and they say the most craziest things, I guess maybe because they just keep it interesting and it's wild that people just flock to them. I don't know what the thing is, but surely there has to be a limit. That's what my whole point of this whole rant is that isn't there a limit to how much a friend can disrespect you to your face? By their words or by their actions and deeds? Isn't there a limit? Don't we all have limits that enough is enough? Especially when you consider the podcast, we're talking about the Joe Budden podcast. I think Mal mentions a few times, money's not an issue for me. Respect is a big deal. I don't care about money, but we have to have respect. If that's the case, then I don't see how you can record with this with a guy who clearly thinks that he's your boss and he can do what he wants, even though you put this thing together, and who kind of doesn't understand why you would be upset when he says that the business of the podcast is not your business. It's just an insane thing to me. An insane thing. It kind of briefly reminds me a little bit of the situation I went through when I was doing parties for a bit here in Dorset in London, and where I had a little falling out with a guy that I was doing them with, and it was, looking back on it, it was stupid. It wasn't really anything to really write home about. I can't even remember actually what caused the actual rift itself, but from what I can remember from my crappy memory, it did involve something along the lines of not really knowing. There was nothing was said explicitly about what role someone had in the thing that we had, the operation, right? The roles weren't really specified that well. Obligations and requirements, I don't know, something along those kind of lines, right? And that got a bit messy, and then one person feels like they're doing less, one person feels like they're doing more, and then of course as men we don't really talk our issues through. We just kind of clam up and just retreat in our corner. And then we had the bar manager at the time was sort of playing us off each other at that point, because obviously they noticed the rift, and then it just got a bit messy. But most of it came down to the fact that, once that line had crossed in both of our eyes, where we thought, hey, you disrespected me or you went over the line, there was no real going back. It never was going to, that friendship was never going to get rescued in any meaningful way. And that was the line. It kind of just crossed, and then from there we just never spoke, and it just kind of, petered out, and that was what it was. And I don't know whether or not it changes if the other person in the relationship is somebody of, some sort of status, some sort of some sort of authority. They have some sort of clout. They have some sort of money. I'm not sure if that changes out. My sensible brain would tell me it definitely does change if the other person has got some sort of clout that, most likely people are going to be willing to, sit down with you and reconcile and try and work things through because they need something from you, right? Because you got something you can offer them, because you have influence, you have power, you have a network, you have wealth, whatever it may be called, right? You have women, whatever, right? There's something there that you can hold on. But I guess if you're just a regular dude, it can be a little bit easier maybe to break up with your friends. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong in this whole thing, but that just threw me for a loop. I just watched that again, those clips. I was just thinking, God damn it, man. Surely there has to come an end where, some disrespect is just too much to just handle. But, maybe I'm in the minority here. Maybe I'm in the minority. Moving on from that, actually, from weird people who kind of become successful. Whoops.
I saw the first.
Let's pause that. Moving on from people who are, maybe have questionable personalities, but also strive. This is an interesting article here from Fortune, courtesy of Fortune, regarding Travis Kalanick, the founder of Uber, who was ousted from Uber due to some, workplace dramas, and now he's launching this thing called Cloud Kitchens, which essentially lives on apps like Deliveroo and Uber, and basically allows restaurants or chefs or cooks, whatever they may be called, to set up these little kitchens that they just basically exist on the app alone, and they can basically set them up really quickly, rebrand, offer loads of really specific meals in different areas, and essentially just give a whole swath of people a chance to basically start their own business. It's pretty cool and idea, to be honest, because it allows people with maybe not the means to set up, have their own infrastructure or hire a kitchen, all that malarkey, to basically go in a place where it's all kind of set up. You have your own little individual kitchens. I think most of the restaurants are listed or within the cloud kitchens ecosystem. You won't even see the name Cloud Kitchens. It's sort of like something you'd only hear in the background, but you just see the list of sometimes if you go on Uber Eats, you'll see list of restaurants that you don't necessarily see in real life. Those are usually Cloud Kitchens. So anyway, he's at the heart of more controversy because I guess in this new company there's been some issues regarding the way that he leads, and it just made me think about whether or not it's actually possible to be a founder, CEO of a company that's really trying to change the world in a really meaningful way, not in some shitty startup that's decided they're the Uber of printers. No, I mean like an actual thing, a service, an app, a product that's legitimately going to change things forever. Is there a way to lead a company like that without being a cock, without being without having a little cunty side to you? Is that possible? I don't think it is. I think you have to have it. And I think Travis Kalanick, from what I've read so far, imagine being one of the first employees that was at Uber. Maybe employee number 22, employee number 57, 154. What that must have been like, building this company that has gone, has turned into such a big brand that we use the phrase to Uber just to mean getting in a taxi, getting in a cab. That's what we use that phrase for. Insane. It completely changed the entire, sometimes layout of cities in certain places, right? I'm sure influenced politics in ways that he probably doesn't even understand. There's no way you can lead a company like that and just be everyone's friend and be the sort of like happy-go-lucky, ping pong playing CEO that people want you to see, like that kind of, who's that wild lad from WeWork, right? It doesn't, you just can't do it, especially to a high level, and to do it professionally too. So anyway, this article sort of details it and sort of talks about some of the grievances some of these people had with Travis Kalanick's leadership at Cloud Kitchen. So let's continue here. It said, from a certain point of view, Uber is a brilliant idea to offer transportation services and new and enabled proliferation of the smartphone technology. In another view, Uber is more of a brilliant idea to arbitrage loopholes in the existing employment law, taxi regulation, and other social mores that had built up over decades. That second sentence is more so an indicative of, tech journalists nowadays. It feels like there's a weird combativeness happening in there. I'm not sure why that is. It feels like the journalists are out for blood and want to take down some of the leading founders in the industry. Why? Don't ask me what the point is, but they are mostly I wouldn't say the cynical type, but they do definitely see their glass half empty when it comes to some of the leading startup founders within the tech space, which is understandable, I guess. Some of these guys have been basically able to run amok without any sort of, I won't say checks and balances, but without being called out. So maybe this was the great leveler. It kind of, allowed things to kind of return to some level of normalcy. I don't know. But let's continue. Uber co-founder and former CEO Travis Kalanick takes no prisoner attitude helped the company grow quickly and become the market leader, but it also led to the eventual downfall in 2017 as complaints and investigations of Uber's conduct under this tenure mounted. And I remember, right, before I continue, that I think I did, just after this happened and he got ousted from Uber, I'm pretty sure I saw Travis Kalanick sitting in a coffee shop somewhere in London. I'm going to say somewhere near Charing Cross. I was going on my way to work and I walked past a coffee shop, and I swear when I looked inside, I saw someone that looked exactly like Travis, just sitting and having a coffee, browsing his phone. I was sure it was him. I wanted to go back and say hi, but now I was like, you know what? I've got nothing cool to say. I've got nothing interesting to ask, so I'm just going to leave it and keep it moving. But I'm pretty sure I saw him. I'm not too sure whether or not he's got a house. If you're familiar with Travis Kalanick and you know he's got a house in London, let me know in the comments. Did I see him in London, or was I dreaming? It continues. All that Asian history and startup land came rushing back to me this week as I read Emily Freilander's detailed and devastating investigation for Vice on Kalanick's new thing, Cloud Kitchens, its parent company, City Storage Systems. It's really a masterclass in investigative journalism. Kalanick's new business offers a takeout food in the original way, cooking everything at large decentralized facilities with delivery handled by Grubhub, Uber Eats, and the like. To attract customers, the so-called ghost kitchens create virtual online restaurants listed in Grubhub and similar apps, listings that look just like real restaurants, because they are, right? This is the weird thing. And again, you know what's interesting about this sort of rebuttal and this takedown of Travis Kalanick and cloud kitchens? This kind of negatively affects the working class, right? Because those are most of the people who are setting up cloud kitchens or working within that space, right? Whether they're the delivery drivers or whatever it may be. So kind of taking him down again for this new startup, this new venture he has running at the moment, is going to negatively affect the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of families who are probably only getting by because, this service is basically running. So that's the interesting part of it. Like, these journalists feel like they're doing, they're sort of like fighting a noble fight, and they're kind of speaking truth to power, but the unintended consequences of it is that you're going to take the food off the table of somebody who probably, can't afford to lose that plate. You're going to prevent a kid from going to school. Like, it's just an insane thing to really think about it. Freilander's first suspicions grew widely when named restaurants like Effing Good Pizza, Pimp My Pasta, OMG BBQ, LOL, that's quite a funny name actually, turned up in her local DoorDash listings. I'm going to say Doja Cat, my bad. It continues. Suddenly, she says, I was seized by a need to get to the bottom of the matter that felt like a glitch in the fabric of my humdrum and panic existence. That sounds like something someone would say when they're going to start a Me Too campaign, isn't it? Suddenly, I felt the need to get my money up. And they continue, what did these clickbait restaurants brands come from? And even if they didn't seem to be technically exist, why did the delivery markets across the US and the countries around the world suddenly seem to be flooded with them? Turned out that they were non-existent in the real world, just different faces of the same local outposts of Kalanick's cloud kitchens. The startups have even gone a step further and helped real restaurants diversify into the ghost kitchens market by creating multiple online destination identities for them in delivery apps. In theory, there's nothing really wrong with the ghost kitchens or single restaurants creating several online storefronts, just like an avid video gamer might create different personas best suited for the different games. If an Italian restaurant that serves pizza, pasta, and seafood can triple its earnings by adding specialized yet fictional online restaurants that focus on one category, it could be a win-win. The restaurants get more business and the customers get clearer search experience, which is something you've definitely probably noticed if you've been on those apps. Some of the better restaurants, especially some of the ones that have been around for donkey years, the menus are just too long. It's just too hard to figure out what's the best thing, what doesn't work. So I remember watching a video about somebody advising a restaurant in order to kind of, I think where did I read it? I forgot what it was, but somewhere I read something about the advice they gave to restaurants was basically when they finally do set up themselves on these delivery platforms, is to basically provide them with a bespoke menu that's only to be delivered via that menu. Maybe you take some elements of the stuff that you already have in your in-house menu and shit, but you have to have a custom version of it because certain foods don't travel well. Certain foods don't maybe come across or translate as well via the menu in terms of reading the ingredients or what it's named after. So all these things can kind of play a part in it. It continues, but when Kalanick involved, who have been on the lookout for further arbitrage of the rules and locals more. Sorry, continue. Let's move on here. These customers could leave negative. These customers could leave negative reviews, but what's on stop a ghost kitchen from reopening up again? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's move on. So the whole point of that, I was basically saying, is that can you be a leader of a company such as a cloud kitchen, such as an Uber, such as an Airbnb, without having a little bit of a mean, if not lethal streak that allows you to basically cut through the mire and get to the other side? Is it possible? I don't know. Next on the list, what do we have? Oh yeah, we have rating news via Variety about the Oscars. Oscars ratings plummet to a record low, down 58% compared to last year. I still don't understand why they don't just stream the Oscars, free to air on YouTube or something. It doesn't necessarily seem like anybody gives a crap about them, mostly because of the movies. I don't think it's the actual to do with anything else but the actual quality of the films. I guess because society is changing and people are on their SJW soapbox and all this sort of stuff, and everyone is giving you their political opinion, it makes sense that the art will reflect it. You hope it wouldn't. You'd hope actual true artists would come through and decide to make something that spoke to our times without it being too topical and also without being laden with identity politics and stuff. But the world is what it is. But it definitely has a lot to say with why the ratings of the Oscars plummet, because if that's the case and you're only making movies that have a message or that speak to something or speak truth to power, whatever that nonsense phrase is, most people, I'd imagine, the average everyday consumer who goes to like an AMC or an Odeon or whatever, or Picture House, they don't care about messages. They just want to see a fun movie, right? That's it. You saw the reception. Everyone saw the reception of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Everyone saw the reception of The Irishman, and how normal audiences kind of responded to that length and that details. Like, oh, this is so long. People, by and large, and those are two movies, directed by two of the greatest living directors of in this movie thing. So imagine what people are thinking about some of these politically charged ones, or the ones about slavery. It's just like enough. But anyway, courtesy of Variety, has said the 93rd Academy Awards ceremony, broadcast live from both Union Station and the Dolly Theatre in LA ABC, hit a staggering low. Now I know why they don't stream it on YouTube, because of ABC basically owns the rights to that, and they want to make sure they collect all the coins for themselves. It says here, per Nielsen Live Plus same day preliminary national numbers, an average of 9.85 million viewers tuned in on Sunday evening to watch a more intimate and stripped down version of the Oscars in the midst of the pandemic. That's a 58.3 million, 13.75 million viewer drop off from last year. The Academy's third host list show in Railroad, Rick scored, what am I talking like this for? Scored 1.9 rating among adults and an 18 to 49 as fast national ratings, a 64.2 dip. For comparison, last year's ceremony garnered 5.3 rating in the key demographic and a 23.6 million viewership per the night's higher time zone adjusted national charts. The Oscars 2019 delivered a 7.7, while the 12% up, blah, blah, blah. So the only thing actually to speak about that's worth anything to give a damn about was, of course, Lakeith's suit that he wore at the Oscars. That's been the only thing that I've seen on my timeline. People talking about fashion and what people wore on the red carpet and shit. People didn't really give a shit about the movies. I'm not too sure if people actually. I've still yet to watch. What is it called? The movie that he's in with Daniel Kaluuya. I've yet to watch it still, but I'm sure a lot of the movies that a lot of the people That's the one, Judas and the Black Messiah. A lot of people that were getting love in terms of their outfits, I'm sure most people that were loving the outfits definitely haven't watched the movie, and probably vice versa. Very, very strange affair all around, to be completely honest. But you know, again, maybe if they streamed it online, it would be far better viewed. But these companies want to keep all the money all the time, so that's unlikely to happen. That's unlikely to happen. Moving on, we have interesting news regarding Chris D'Elia. You know, somebody I've covered a lot on my show in general. It looks like he's got some good news, finally a bit of good news, or, you know, depending on how you view these sort of things. But this is courtesy of Radar Online. Woman drops lawsuit accusing comedian Chris D'Elia of possessing child porn. That's a heavy allegation to put out there about somebody, isn't it? So the article says the following: the woman who sued Chris D'Elia accusing him of possessing child porn has dropped the federal lawsuit against the comedian. According to court documents obtained by Radar, the woman using the pseudonym Jane Doe informed the court that she was dismissing all claims against D'Elia. So it's not even as if he paid her off. This is her saying, you know what, I can't go through with this. It continues. The document read that plaintiff Jane Doe and her counsel hereby give notice that the above entitled action is voluntarily dismissed without prejudice against the defendant. The without prejudice means Doe could refile the claims at a later date. So maybe she's just got cold feet. She got, you know, terrible anxiety, trolls DM'd her, who knows. But from what it looks like, she decided that this wasn't worth going forward with and just pulled the plug. Now, does that call into question whether or not whatever she said, whether she accused D'Elia of actually happened? I definitely think it does. But does that absolve him completely when he's looking at all the other accounts? Probably not. It continues. Back in March, Joe sued D'Elia, accusing him of violating federal child sexual exploitation and child P laws. In the suit, Doe said that she met D'Elia on Instagram in 2014. They eventually moved the conversation over to Snapchat, classic move. At that time, the comedian was 34 and Doe was 17. So what was she at best, and what was she lying about age-wise? She said she was 19, 18. I imagine so, right? I'd imagine. It continues. The plaintiff said that D'Elia persuaded her to attend one of the shows in October 2014. Again with the shows, they're sort of luring. I remember who said it recently. I think Yanis Papas maybe said it recently on the Your Mum House podcast about there is a weird correlation between how, you know, serial killers and comedians move or navigate in the world, right? It definitely is an odd one. They have these sort of rituals of where they take people in order to do certain things, like bizarre humans. It continues here. The plaintiff said D'Elia persuaded her to meet at one of the shows in October 2014. The two had reportedly had sex before the show, and allegedly, the alleged counter, D'Elia expressed that Miss Doe's age, innocence, and virginity made the encounter hot. Doe claims that D'Elia solicited more than 100 sexual photos of her, I guess when she was underage, hence the PORN exploitation thing. Half of these photos were taken when she was 17. She claimed that she requested additional videos showing her with a SEX toy and SEX with other boys her age. Mamma mia. She claims to have been a virgin before D'Elia, and the lawsuit also had the unspecified damage, along with a court ordered releasing the alleged P images of he possessed of her. In a statement released after the filing, Doe said, "When I was in my final year of high school and still a child, I was groomed by a celebrity twice my age. Chris D'Elia abused his status and fame to lure me in, take advantage and manipulate me when I was a vulnerable age." There's really a lack of accountability with this, isn't it? Right, as if this like man dragon, no copyright when it comes to the Brian Callen, but there is a lack of accountability on both ends, right? There's a lack of accountability from the comedians that are being accused that they could ever have played a part in their own demise, and that their reckless actions and their pursuit for hedonism at all cost has eventually cost them both their careers in a big, meaningful way, especially when you think of Brian Callen. But there's also no responsibility, it feels like, with some of these girls who purposely went out their way to hang out, exchange flirty messages with, and just in general be inappropriate with people that they probably should have no business talking to. Again, yes, some could argue the power and the maybe adultness of the situation should fall on the adults, and you should maybe, if somebody does come around who's not of age or somebody that you probably wouldn't want to be seen out in public with, it's your prerogative to basically tell them, hey, this ain't gonna happen, especially with your family and stuff, innit? Like, madness. It continues. Crystalia abuses status as "Let me in." She said that I want other girls to know that they are not alone, and it's time to justice for the mental and physical toll he has put us through. At the time, a spokesperson for the comedian said Chris denies the allegations and vigorously defend himself against them in court. So, what I'm thinking is that, can these sort of stains ever be removed from you? Is there ever a possibility in life where Chris can return to having some semblance of a career? I said before on the show a few times, I think he can. If he's not worried about being in Hollywood, he could easily go on tour and do that sort of stuff. Maybe do some guest appearances here and there. You know, whoever would be the first person to allow him on, I guess, is going to be the big hero. But that makes a lot of sense. But in terms of getting back into industry, that it doesn't matter what anyone says when they take it back. People are always going to feel like you did it, especially if you can't prove it without any doubt. That's probably the hardest thing about this. But again, I guess it's probably good news for Crystalia. I'm sure he's probably going to be ecstatic about this, you know, and he's going to have a chance to get out on the road and stuff, and maybe put to test some of these developments and growths he says he's kind of, you know, basically been able to go through during this crazy time. Let's see him put into action, right? When you actually go on the road and you're performing in front of a stage and there's a woman in the corner giving you the FU eyes, let's see if he actually abstains. Let's see. Oh man, these people are hilarious. They're hilarious. What else do we have here? Move on from that one. How much time have we used up so far? Anyway, let me double check to make sure I haven't gone over my time. Nope, I have not. What else we have here? Let's move on. We've done that. We've done this. We've done that. Yeah, let's do this a bit. This is an interesting one, right? This is a story courtesy of Sky News, BBC, the New York Times. Like these mad headlines, right? Let me get, if I can get up on here for you. Bear with me 1 second. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So look at this. Look at this headline. So this is courtesy of the New York Times. It says COVID-19 devastates India. Deaths go unaccounted for. And if you're just listening to this, on the screen there's like a drone shot of what looks like makeshift crematoriums, basically, where they are unfortunately having to lay down those who passed away due to complications with COVID, because I guess hospitals and stuff are being completely overrun and there's no room for some of these people to be laid to rest. You've got obviously that headline, that picture looks insane, and you got this headline for the BBC. It says India COVID, Delhi builds a makeshift funeral pyres as death climbs, right? Crazy headline. And then you got another one, India's crematoriums under-reporting bodies as suspicion grows over the true number of coronavirus deaths. So an absolute shit show of a situation going over there. Then you've got these clips from Business Techno of a whole plethora, a whole host, an absolute gaggle, rowdy bunch of DJs who have all kind of flown over to India and, the last few weeks and months and stuff to play gigs. And again, I've kind of gone back and forth on my view on play graves and stuff, and generally I don't really care now, especially when it concerns people who probably should know better, governments who are clearly trying to, put their citizens' life in danger in order to line their own pockets. I don't really have anything to say to all that sort of stuff, and most of it, especially when it's occurring in countries that, I have no business, inputting any of my views and opinions on how they should run their country on, and I won't really be an effector of change in any meaningful way in that respect. But you can't help but feel like, do these guys feel any levels of complicity when they see those sort of headlines and they were playing in India just a few weeks ago? Is there anything that in those guys' minds that lets them think that, hey, I feel really guilty about doing this because, people are legitimately having to, dig up a little ditch somewhere and light a few sticks on top of their grandma that just passed away because they can't give her a dignified sort of, send-off because we're living in the peakest of times. And here's a clip, I guess, of Adana twins, Ages of Time, and him playing somewhere in India that somebody uploaded onto the Business Techno site or Twitter profile. And you got, let's fast forward a little bit here. the one thing to be fair about these videos, this is the first one I've seen so far of a playground where people are actually dancing and it looks like they're having fun. The first one I've seen. Most of the ones I've seen are usually, it looks like, especially the ones in Tulum and stuff, it looks like a bunch of rich people have basically decided to all kind of get away from, you know, the mess of the real world and kind of inoculate themselves in Tulum. And they basically throw parties for each other and hire some equipment or maybe go play in clubs. But it looks like the same type of people hanging around each other in those kind of spaces, which is, you know, is what it is. You can't choose your friends. Or you can, depending if you're trying to, you know, climb yourself up in, you know, the career ladder. But this is the first one I've seen so far where people are actually dancing, you know, hands in the air, whistling, making noises and shit. The first one I've seen. Let's fast forward a bit here. Still playing that shit music. And then you got a video here of Artbat, Black Coffee, and Charlotte DeWitt playing in the same place. You got a picture of, of course, a video of Deborah DeLuca playing her terrible brand of techno, whatever that bullshit she plays. And then you've got another video of Dixon saying what to people again. I love Dixon, one of my favorite DJs of all time, but this is a bad look, my friend. What does it say here?
2021, so we see us again.
Together we dance alone.
Yeah, we probably dance together alone.
I don't know, brother. You got another one. You got a video of Jamie Jones and Lehar playing somewhere. I guess everyone's got to feed their family. But yeah, man, I don't know. I wonder if they feel any sort of level of complicity in it. I know, I get it. Again, most of this is odd and complex to talk about because some of these people, you know, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable telling anybody how much money they should be earning, whether or not they should go out and, you know, go out and earn a living. You know, that's not my place at all. And I'm sure some people would argue that it doesn't matter what I earn. I have a right to earn a living. You know, I've worked really hard for this career. I'm going to go get it. And then I'm sure some people are also in a position where they're living in a country where their government hasn't necessarily handled COVID, you know, in a very, you know, good way to enable the economy to get back to any semblance of normality. So they're essentially on their hands and knees hoping for a miracle, and then the miracle comes via their inbox with their agent or booking manager telling them, hey, I've got a residency for you here in the middle of flipping, you know, wherever, New Delhi or something. You're going to run at the opportunity, especially if you've been, you know, signing on for the past 6 months and stuff. The first thing you want to do is go out there and earn a living doing the thing you legitimately love to do. Anyone would probably take the opportunity to do so. So sometimes I feel like some of the criticism feels a little bit disingenuous because it's basically coming from people who were never offered the chance to play in the middle of India during a global pandemic for flipping £30,000 or whatever they get paid. If you were getting paid that much, you probably would go too. It's like, I remember that was why I had a whole aversion to the whole, you know, remember that whole feature with Resident Advisor concerning, I think it was either Seth Strokes or Jamie Jones, but something about workload, right, and burnout and how many gigs they were doing. And I remember that being a thing. There was a thing back in the day where people would kind of wear with pride how many listings and dates they were basically playing at on their RA, because basically RA is similar to like a DJ IMBD. So you'd have like a list of all the past things that you've done, and people would wear it with pride and say, hey, I'm the one playing 400 shows per year. And then Dixon will come out and say, I only do 120 because I want to see my family, right? Everyone's got their thing that they did, but I remember the numbers being a really, really big deal. So you can understand why those same people who are quite type A and would be willing to, you know, not see their family for 6 weeks on end, would be also be the first ones to jump on a plane to a third world country in order to go and play in front of people because, you know, they can't face the internal damnation of their own homes or something. But I don't know, who knows? Maybe it's not that serious. Maybe it's just you got to earn a living. But I wonder if with all this news of these outdoor crematoriums, whether or not some of these DJs feel guilty. Probably not, I'm assuming, because hey, you got to earn a living somehow, and they could argue that, you know, people die every day. But it's a wild place to be alive. It's a wild time to be alive, not wild place. It's a wild time to be alive. It really, really is. What else I wanted to talk about here? Let's move on. You've got that. You got this. Oh yeah, let's just talk about this one. I would never have assumed this would ever happen, but Joe Rogan basically got on the podcast today or yesterday with Andrew Santino and kind of apologized for his stance regarding vaccinations with young people, which is a very odd move from Joe because he comes from the school of, public backlash where you don't engage it at all. You just ignore it and pretend it didn't happen and just keep living your life, and eventually people will move on too. That's usually what ends up happening, right? But I don't know, man. If for some reason Joe decided to basically say, hey, nah, I'm going to kind of, set the record straight as to what I actually meant. And it's interesting approach to what he actually said, because it kind of sounds like to me that he's backpedaling. I didn't really expect this from Joe, because again, he never really addresses things at all in any sort of meaningful way when it comes to getting back, which I think is the right way to do things. But this is the first time I've actually seen Joe kind of explain himself in any sort of meaningful way. So I wonder, is it a consequence of the Spotify contract? Is it just Joe growing, older and more, mature, not mature, but becoming a person who kind of is less triggered about certain things and doesn't want to bum anybody out, so just would rather respond and kind of address the backlash than let it fester? Who knows? But this is the clip itself. I play in the background so I don't get taken down. But this is Joe Rogan basically explaining what he meant by, young people not taking the vaccine.
The thing, like all these people that are saying, and in many ways, listen, here's the thing. These are not like planned statements. Let's be real clear. Yeah. When I say something stupid, I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say before I say it. I'm just saying it, right? I don't have an off-air and on-air voice. I don't. No. I have me. This is it. Yeah. Yeah. I got through the fucking net and I'm swimming in open waters, okay? Yeah. And that's just how I live. Yeah. I don't, like, if you say you disagree with me, I probably disagree with me too. I disagree with me all the time. If someone said, you have, young, healthy, 21-year-old people who eat well and exercise are not at high risk for coronavirus, but you should think about other people, I would say, well, that's a different argument, and yes, that makes sense. But I would say, aren't those people vaccinated? And shouldn't we vaccinate the vulnerable people? Yeah. And then we'd have a different conversation. Right. The problem is today, everything's all headlines and highlights, and it's all clickbait, which is fine. That's the business. Yeah. And listen, I have a deep respect for real journalism. I love Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi and people that stick their fucking neck out and do real journalism. But there's a lot of people out there that have to make a fucking living. And what's the best way to make a living? Well, here's one way. Take a jackass like me. Go over their podcast. Go over this 3-hour drunken, ridiculous podcast. Did we drink with Dave? Yes. No. Dave Smith?
I don't know.
Nope.
I don't think so.
No.
No,
I don't think we drank.
Say no, probably not.
But that's unusual.
Yeah.
A lot of times we're drinking or we're high. Yeah. And I say stupid shit. I get it. And if you mind that and you make money off of that, more power to you. Sure. I don't care. Yeah. I'm happy for you. Right. But just don't lie. Just don't lie. Right. Get a little clickbaity. We're good. Yeah. That's okay.
But I'm not going to.
And yeah, he kind of apologized in a weird Joe Rogan kind of way, which you don't really see. Again, I don't know if this is a consequence of the Spotify deal, and maybe this kind of gives us a window into a window into some of the terms. Maybe there was a sort of like a stipulation that he would have to do certain things in order to kind of trigger certain payments or whatever. Maybe avoid a certain scandal at a certain date. I don't really know, to be completely sure. I would imagine someone like a Joe wouldn't sign something like that, considering how much he speaks about counterculture. But when $100 million check is being kind of passed to you in terms of as an offer around the table, you're probably going to change a lot of the things that you would generally put up with and not put up with. That could be a thing. Or it could just be a coincidence. Not really too sure, to be completely honest, but it's kind of nice to see him respond in some meaningful way. Again, I think it was completely blown out of proportion. I think if people are allowed to tell you that you should get a vaccine and then wear free masks, then it is also okay for someone to tell you that, hey, if you're fit and healthy, looking at the data, you should be perfectly fine if you get it. Obviously, there's some very odd examples out there. That basketball player that got COVID and needs an inhaler. That dude on Broadway who had his leg amputated, had a liver transplant, and then passed away slowly, with his wife and young child by his bed, right? And you'd imagine someone that does Broadway, even if they have unhealthy lifestyle habits outside of it, but, being on stage 12 hours a day and, rehearsing and whatnot, like, you would make sure you're in you would assume that person would be in great shape, right? If they were in Broadway day in, day out, or week in, week out. and this person again ended up passing away. So there's definitely examples of people who are young who got COVID and it didn't really go too well for them. So most of the time people say, hey, you don't want to play those odds. You don't want to find out you're that one person that's allergic to this, or not allergic, but you know, the way it affects you is, you know, is obviously fatal. You don't want to go through that, so just avoid it by, you know, washing hands, staying safe, putting a mask on, all that sort of stuff in a crowded environment. And it's just an opinion. That's all it is. Maybe it was painted as a, you know, recommendation for people to take, which is probably not the best thing to do. Same with stocks and stuff. You should be offering people unsolicited advice, but come on, everyone needs to get a grip, man. Everyone needs to get a grip. They really do need to get a grip. And, you know, we move on. We completely move on. Next on the list, what else do we have here? See what time I have. Have I filled up all the time? No, I have not. We continue. What else do we have here? Talk about India and COVID. We've spoken about that. Oh yeah, we've spoken about this. This is a pretty tragic story, isn't it? This is courtesy of ABC Action News. There was a really crazy and horrible incident concerning a young dude and his friend who were racing their cars along this, you know, strip somewhere in America, and unlucky for them, and you know, terribly unlucky for the family. A wife and her young daughter were basically crossing the road when the cars were basically racing and ended up crashing into both and killing them. Like crazy and heartbreaking story. And it just kind of made me think about, you know, maybe speaking about relationships and friendships and how those end and stuff. It just made me think about, you know, the limits that people are willing to test their parents and their immediate family members as to what they are willing to kind of put up with when it comes to their actions. I don't know how kind of far that stretches, but I would know if it was my own family, they would disown me if I did something like this. I mean, murdering somebody and taking, you know, people that are integral members of their family away from them it's probably too much to forgive. It's just too much to forgive. But let's just play the video so you can get an understanding of the actual case itself. This first video is of one of the other teen suspects getting bailed out. And then I'll play the other bit with the main character of this story and then come back on the other side. Let's go right there.
News right now, one of the teens accused of street racing on Bayshore Boulevard bonded out of the Orient Road jail just within the last half hour.
We're looking at exclusive video here of 17-year-old John Barano. He is being charged as an adult for his role in the death of a mother and her toddler child.
Let's get right out to ABC Action News reporter Heather Lee, who's been out there all afternoon. So Heather, I know he appeared in court this morning. What did the judge decide?
Well, Wendy, he is required to wear an ankle bracelet. He also had to surrender his passport, and he had to give up the right to drive in the state of Florida. I want to go back to that video that we just showed you of him walking out of the Orient Road jail with his mother. You could see that they were
terrible advertisement for Gymshark. And also, just imagine what that mum has gone through to protect this kid, to bail him out, and to hold his hands like, hey, I've got you. And just imagine the kind of, I guess some parents or some, you know, mothers are just like, you know, they've got this sort of like, I don't care what you do, I'm always going to look after you, I'm always going to kind of protect you sort of thing. But I'd assume there are some who exist that are like, you know what, there's always a limit to my love, and there's a limit to my affection, there's a limit to my loyalty and protection. And you'd imagine killing a mother and her newborn baby would be that limit, right? You would imagine it would be, but it's so complex, it's so hard to really, you know, decide as to what people should do when it comes to looking after their family. It's just difficult. And obviously people, you know, you have no business to kind of butt yourself in because you have no idea what's going on in their immediate family. But my word,
pretty emotional. They were trying to get to that car as quickly as possible, his dad behind the driver's seat. And before they actually walked out, we saw them embracing. They were hugging Barano and his mother was crying. It was very emotional. Of course, once they got in the car, they left. Now, this is video.
Very short notice. And then the next video kind of explains a little bit more about the story. This is from 2018 to 2020, sorry. This is one here. Boom, boom, boom.
Boulevard nearly 3 years ago. Jessica Reisinger-Robino and her 21-month-old daughter, Lilia, were killed attempting to cross the street when two young men were racing. Police say one of those men, Cameron Herron, was going over 100 miles per hour right before he hit and killed them. ABC Action News reporter Heather Lee was one of the first reporters there on the scene that day of the crash and has been following this case ever since then. She was in court today as Herron's family pleaded for forgiveness, and the victim's family begged the judge for maximum punishment.
What a contrast.
Cameron Herron, his family and friends spent the first half of Thursday morning painting the 21-year-old as caring and forgivable with no intent to hurt anyone, calling what happened on Bayshore Boulevard in May of 2018 a tragic accident.
It has been devastating for him and our family. The impact plays over and over in his head. It'll never go away.
His defense team saying Herron made a mistake and didn't fully understand the consequences that could occur while speeding. Dr. Michael Scott Mayer also testified that scientifically, the brain of an 18-year-old isn't fully developed and wired the same way the brain of a person in their 20s is.
How could he do something so stupid? He's a bright kid. It is because the stop and think part of the brain, the frontal lobe, where we stop and think about our action, is not developed.
Herron's family also talked about selling their house and fighting their insurance company to get money to pay the Reisinger-Robin Holt family.
We also have a perspective on this. So I don't want to seem that I don't feel for the Herron family. I do. But their perspective on what they've lost can't compare to two sweet souls that were crossing the street coming home from a party.
The state also pulled up a log from Herron's Mustang that details how fast it was going just days before the crash, 162 miles per hour on I-75.
This was a crash, not an accident.
Exactly.
Please be aware of that.
Emotional testimony from Dave.
So yeah, like, would you be willing to forgive your child if they did something similar? Would you be willing to sort of just say, hey, I'm going to always be there for you no matter what happens? I don't think I could. But again, you know, you have to have a kid in order to kind of make that decision. I'm sure things change once you do. And you just see that little, you know, sweet innocent soul looking back at you, and you suddenly decide, I will do anything to protect you. But surely there has to be a limit. Surely. And you'd imagine, you know, taking the life of a new mother in such a terrible way that this would be one of them. You'd imagine so. But, you know, people are different, I guess. People are different. Anyway, that has been the AgostinhoZinga Show episode number 453. Thanks guys for tuning in. A bit of a short one today. I'll make sure the next are a little bit more lengthier in their overall length. Lengthier in their overall length. If it's your first time, check out the show via YouTube. You know what to do. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, leave me a comment down below. If you listen via the podcast app, a 5-star review and a share will help it go a long way. And of course, support via Patreon, always welcomed. You're going to get your bonus episode on Patreon this week. So make sure you jump on there. Don't delay on patreon.com/Agostinho. Join in, get involved and subscribed. And I'll see you guys again soon. Peace. Peace. Peace.